You've heard me talk about my passed away loved one, Mark, in many of my videos. And today I'm going to share a bigger part of our story, our journey, and I'll share a few of the signs that he sent me shortly after he died. But specifically, I want to share this really amazing dream where I was given information that I could not have possibly known. And if you really want to hear the full story and all of the signs that he sent me in the first 2 years after he died, you can check out my book, Signs Surround You, Love Never Dies. Are you ready? Well, I was really living the American dream. I had my dream job. I was a pharmaceutical sales rep. I had been married for 16 years and been with my husband for about 20. And I had two beautiful children, a daughter and an older son. And my son had been bugging me about wanting to play guitar. So finally, I was able to sign him up for guitar lessons, and he began playing guitar. And about that time, I received a notice that two bands were going to come to town to perform a concert, 38 Special and the band Starship. Now, Starship was one of my all-time favorite bands because they have a song called Miracles, which back in college had become my all-time favorite song. As a matter of fact, I owned every single CD that had that song featured on it. And instead of going this year to a family reunion in Iowa, we decided to stay home so I could attend these two concerts. And it was around the time of my daughter's birthday, so we decided to have a big birthday party for her that weekend. So that night, it was the 38 Special concert, and several of us went to the concert. And while we were sitting there waiting for the show to start, my son dug down into his pocket and pulled out a guitar pick and said, "Mom, look, I brought this guitar pick. Do you think there's any way we could have one of the guitar players sign my guitar pick?" And I thought, well, I don't know if I can help you do that, but I'm going to sure try. So the only thing I could think to do was walk up to the t-shirt booth. And there was a man who was there, and I talked to him, told him my dilemma and what I was looking for. And ironically, that man happened to be the concert promoter. He was actually just giving somebody a bathroom break. And so he took us over to the band that had just left the stage, and the band members came out, and the guitar player signed my son's pick, and he was so excited. And the promoter asked us why we were at the concert, and I told him that it was my daughter's birthday that day, and so he gave us backstage passes, and also told us that those passes would be good the next day when Starship was going to perform. So we excitedly watched this concert of 38 Special from backstage. And then the next day, knowing that we were going to be able to have a chance to meet the band members, and of course my son was going to have a chance to have another guitar pick signed, I decided to do a little bit of research online to see who these band members were. And I noticed that the lead guitarist, before he joined the band Starship, had been a guitar teacher. And I thought, oh wow, what a cool connection. I'm sure he'll happily sign my son's guitar pick. So we went to the concert, and my husband declined to go with us. So it was just the two kids and I. And at the end of the concert, we were lucky enough to meet Mark Abrahamian, who was the lead guitarist of the band Starship. And he spent a little bit of time with us, and I told him about my son and his new love and interest in playing the guitar. And he gave us a couple of tips on how to continue on with his passion, and he told me to reach out to him at any time. So we excitedly went home, told my husband about the evening, and I told him that I'm really good at relationship building, and I was going to intentionally come up with a question so that I could continue my conversation with Mark, hoping that maybe the next year when he came back to town to do another concert, that my son would be able to have his own guitar lesson. And that was my only intention. So we thought of a question to ask Mark, and we sent off an email, and he very graciously responded, answering our question, and thus began an email correspondence between Mark and between me. And it very quickly turned personal, and Mark began crossing lines. What I didn't know was the night that I met him, he had been sitting on the guitar or sitting on the sidewalk when we walked by, and he had said a prayer asking God to send him a beautiful woman. And unbeknownst to me, I had moments later walked by him, and when he saw me, he said it was love at first sight for him. And so he had an interest in me, and I was married. So I was very careful with the line crossing. I really didn't want to get into any kind of an affair, but I certainly did enter into what would be considered an emotional affair. And over the course of time, Mark and I went from communicating through email to talking on the phone. And we would spend hours and hours every day talking. And Mark was this very deep philosophical person, and he had all kinds of ideas and things that he had studied that I was very unfamiliar with, and he became my greatest spiritual teacher. We spent hundreds of hours talking on the phone, and even though he lived in Austin, Texas, and at the time I lived in the Chicagoland area, we were able to see each other when he would go to different concerts in my area. And every time I would see him, we would become closer and closer. But I was very careful not to cross that line from an emotional affair into a full-blown regular affair. But in reality, I did fall in love with him. And the relationship became difficult because I was still married and he was not. And he was in and out of our relationship. So he would push me away. And when he would do that, I would literally feel like he was going to push me away. I would feel it before it would happen. We had a very unusual connection that was inexplicable to me. I didn't understand the draw and why we were so completely connected to each other. And I really didn't want to be in this emotional affair, but I couldn't stop it because the connection I had with him was unlike a connection I'd had with anybody else. My connection with my husband at the time, he was very introverted and we didn't spend very much time talking. So Mark filled this gap that I had, this need to connect with somebody and to be heard and to have all these amazing conversations like I had never had with anybody before. So after about a year and a half, almost 2 years, Mark and I decided that we were going to, well, it had been about a year, we decided we were going to end our relationship with each other. And we stopped all communication and we pulled away. And I got busy on trying to figure out what I was going to do in my relationship with my husband, which was not happy. So we started going to counseling, and soon counseling really just became a way for me to tell my husband that I needed to leave the relationship. So ultimately, I decided to move out of the house. But before I could do that, I bought a foreclosure house and it needed to have a bunch of construction done to it. It was within walking distance of the house that I was living in. So I began this big construction project of remodeling this house that was in horrible condition. And it had been about 6 months and I had filed for divorce, and I had actually after that begun seeing a new man, and his name was also Mark. And one day I had been reading this book called 3 Magic Words by U.S. Anderson. And in this book, they talked about an experiment that you could do where you would take an item like a piece of jewelry and you would sit down and think about this person for 10 minutes and will them to contact you. So I had been missing Mark a lot. I'd missed our connection and our conversations. So I took one of his guitar picks and I held it and I sat on the floor of my foreclosure house and I willed him to call me for a full 10 minutes. And I know that doesn't sound like a long time, but when you sit down to do something like this, it's a long time. Well, within 3 hours, I got a phone call from Mark, and he had no idea that I had done this. And then we began what turned into a friendship. And we started off as like friends starting all over again, and we had this magical connection once again. And so it was Labor Day, 2 years after we had met, and he came to town, but I had no idea that he was coming to town, and he reached out to me and asked me if I would attend a concert. And it was the same weekend that I was now moving into my new life without my ex-husband, and I had filed for divorce, and my parents came to visit, and here I was living in my new space in this new house. And Mark asked me to come and see him in concert, and I declined because my dad wasn't in very good health, and I didn't think my parents would be able to attend the concert. And Mark called and asked me 3 more times before we finally decided to attend the concert, because he was going to be playing with the band Toto along with Starship, and they were going to be playing 4 songs from Toto, and I was super excited to go see him. So since I was dating somebody, I invited that man to come with me to attend this concert, and Mark played with Toto, and they played 4 songs, and the last song they played was a song called Rosanna by Toto. And Mark stepped forward at the end of that song and began a 2.5 minute guitar solo for me. It was such a special thing, and I knew that then that was why he wanted me to attend this concert, so that he could do this very special gesture. And I didn't really realize it at the time, but the words were very significant. I think that Mark was ready to have us together. He knew that I was getting divorced, and I think he wanted to be in a relationship, but I didn't. I really wasn't in a place to do that. So at the end of the concert, I went to see him, and I kissed him, but I couldn't take him with me after the concert like I normally would when I would see him, because I was now dating somebody new. So shortly after that, Mark decided he wanted to be in a relationship with somebody where he lived. And so we ended our relationship completely. We cut all ties. Texting was rather new. Facebook was rather new, but I stopped following him on Facebook, and we didn't have any conversation for 3 whole years. Now, it was Labor Day 3 years later, and one of my girlfriends came over to visit on the Monday of Labor Day. And I told her that I had been having these strange feelings that somehow I was going to have a trip to Austin. And she warned me that if I did go to Austin, I shouldn't see Mark. And I kind of admonished her in my mind, thinking, well, if I go to Austin, I'm definitely going to see him. And then the next day was a Tuesday, the Tuesday after Labor Day weekend. And I was on my everyday walk, and all of a sudden, I had this thought that Mark died. And I thought, that's really odd. He's only 46 years old. Like, why would I think that he would die? And it didn't feel like it was my thought, so I kind of pushed it away. And then a little while later, I was taking a shower, and I had a second thought that he had died. But this time the thought was different. The thought was that he had died in a plane crash, and one of his bandmates would be contacting me. Now this time I really took notice, because I knew this wasn't my thought. Because if I had imagined that Mark was going to die, he was a smoker. I would have imagined that he would die from lung cancer, not from flying on a plane, which I thought was very safe. So I really felt like it wasn't my thoughts. But I continued on with my morning, and I went to work, and my mom called me. And I looked at my phone right before I was going to go into a client meeting, and I saw this missed call, and I just had a really bad feeling. So I called my mom, and my mom said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Did you get the text message from your dad?" And I hadn't. And the text message said that Mark had died on Sunday of a heart attack right after stepping off the stage at a concert. And I couldn't believe it. And of course, my mind instantly went to those 2 random thoughts of Mark dying, because they didn't make sense. And I really started to feel like maybe he was contacting me from the other side. Maybe he was letting me know that he died. But why would he contact me? It had been 3 years since we had even spoken. And even though we hadn't spoken in 3 years, for me, there had never been a single day that I hadn't thought about him. but I didn't know if he was really in the same place that I was, if he was still even thinking about me. I was aware, and I found out that he had been engaged and he was ready to get married to somebody else. So I pretty much thought that, he probably wasn't attached to me anymore. And so I kind of let those thoughts go away. But his death affected me so profoundly, more than I ever could have imagined it would, because even though we had ended things, in my mind, I kind of thought we had just pushed the pause button on our relationship. There was a part of me that always believed that at some point in time in the future, like when my kids were older and I was on my own and maybe living in a warmer climate that he would like, that we would come together and we would have a chance to try our relationship again. But this was the end of that dream, and I had to now let that dream go. And for the first time, I cried. I sobbed over the loss of him. It was heartbreaking, and it was the most profound loss I had ever experienced in my entire life. And it really hit me in ways I never would have expected. Well, about 4 days after he died, I got in the car to run an errand, and XM radios, the bridge was showing that it was playing on my radio, except for no sound was coming out of the radio. But the radio screen said, "Jefferson Airplane with Your Love." And this was a song that Mark had played at every single concert I had ever seen him in. And I was astonished by seeing this frozen song, and I pushed the buttons to other stations, and the other stations, whatever song was playing on that station would play, but the screen remained frozen with "Jefferson Airplane with Your Love." And my skeptical brain jumped in saying that there had to be an explanation, a logical, reasonable explanation. Like, I wanted it to be Mark reaching out to me from the other side. I wanted him to be sending me this sign, and I believed in signs, but there was a part of me that didn't think that he would still want to contact me because we hadn't spoken for 3 years. So I did the logical thing. I called XM Radio to see if my radio subscription had changed or if there was some other issue that I was experiencing. And I waited on hold for 20 minutes to talk to somebody. And he told me he'd never heard of anything like this happening before. And he offered to reset my radio remotely. And part of me was screaming, "No, don't do it. This is a special sign." But the logical, rational side of me was like, yeah, let's prove it. Let's see if this is really real. So he reset my radio and nothing happened. And he told me it might take 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes, my radio was still frozen with the "Jefferson Airplane with Your Love." I even turned my car on and off 2 times. And every time when I turned my car back on, the radio was still frozen with that song. And finally, I went to my friend Dawn's house, and she walked outside. She took one look at the screen and said, "Hi, Mark." And then when I came back from lunch, the radio had updated and was back to normal. And that began the first of many signs from Mark. I would walk into a store and I would hear a Starship song playing over the radio, over the speakers in the store. I would see feathers, and I connected to mediums, and I would get special messages where Mark said and confirmed that yes, he did reach out to me on the day he died to let me know that he was gone. And yes, he was still there with me. He knew what was going on in my life, and he was sorry for our separation, and he wished that things had been different. And I got signs for a very long time. And Mark had been gone for about a year when he came to me in a dream, and he told me that he was most proud of our story. So over the first 2 years of his death, I had begun recording every single sign that he sent me, because these signs were so special to me. And I knew that our human mind can play tricks and remember things incorrectly. So I wanted to record these signs for myself so that I could remember exactly what happened, where I was, what all the specific facts were, so I wouldn't remember them incorrectly. And over the 2-year period, I had filled up an entire notebook. And then when I had this dream and Mark told me that he was most proud of our story, the very next day, this book began to write itself. I would get this thought and I would pick up a piece of paper or my computer and I would begin typing, and these words would flow out of my mind. And I don't know about you, but like when I'm helping my kids do a homework assignment and I'm helping them write a paper and they say something to me about an idea, or I say something to them about an idea, when they ask me what that idea was again, it's gone. I can't remember it. But yet over the course of a few months, I would get these completely intact chapters that I would literally just subscribe. So I believe that this book was being divinely written. And the book was called Signs Surround You, Love Never Dies. And the first part of the book documented the story that Mark told me he was so proud of, the story of us. And the second part of the book contained all of the signs, music signs, signs of beavers, which I was told was a special sign that Mark would send me, signs of butterflies and dragonflies and feathers. And these are all very special ways that the other side reach out to us, let us know that they are still around us, that they love us and they never leave us. So over a period of 2 years, I had all of these fully documented signs that I included in my book. So I know that one of the questions people ask is, I'm skeptical, like I don't believe in signs. So are signs really real? Well, I know that people are skeptical, and it's hard to understand and believe in something that seems to be a coincidence. But you could discount all of the signs that I've written about in my book, except for this one. I had an incredible dream after Mark died that I think is unexplainable. I was given special information that I couldn't have known. And in this dream, in real life, I had been having, I was going to have a medium reading, and this medium kept canceling me, and I didn't understand why I kept getting canceled. And on the morning of the reading, I had this incredible dream. And in my dream, this particular medium walked into the room and began talking and kind of telling me a commercial about herself instead of giving me this reading that I had been wanting to connect to Mark through. And I didn't want to be rude, but I felt like she was wasting my time. She wasn't giving me any information. And then all of a sudden, she told me she had to leave in the middle of the reading, and she left. And I was just dumbfounded that I didn't get this reading that I had been so looking forward to. And then all of a sudden, these two men walked into the room. They were tall and slender with medium length brown hair, and they had these eyes that I could only describe as spooky blue eyes, like the kind of eyes that you would see somebody who has contact lens wearing at Halloween. And they almost didn't look real. They had very porcelain skin. And one of them stepped forward and said to me, there's a man named Mark, and he took 2 pieces of paper and he flung them up on the wall, and they stuck on the wall. And the first piece of paper was a picture of Mark's very vintage El Camino car, the only car he had ever owned. And the second picture was of a car engine. And the man said before Mark died, he was having car problems. He had an oil problem with his car. And I thought, well, thanks a lot for telling me, but we hadn't had any contact for 3 years. Like, how am I even supposed to know anything about that? And then they began taking this large piece of fish and reading it, and it was just a strange thing, and my dream ended. But it didn't feel like a dream. It felt very real, and I immediately woke up and went to my daughter's room and told my daughter about this incredible dream I had had. Well, later in the day, I called Mark's mom to tell her. She was expecting me to tell her about the reading, but instead I wound up telling her about this dream I had. Now, this was very shortly after Mark had died. He had only been gone for less than a month. And he said, I was just with Mark's dad, and Mark's dad was very sad, and he showed me this piece of paper. It was a fax, and they had been working on some issue that Mark was having with his car. And she didn't know what the issue was, but she told me she would reach out to Mark's dad and, without giving anything away, would ask him what the issue that they had been working on his car had been. So later that night, my son and I were alone, and we decided to go to dinner, and my son picked a sushi restaurant for dinner. And while I was sitting in the parking lot ready to get out and go into the restaurant, I got an email from Mark's mom. And she said, "Well, Lori, it looks like that dream of yours wasn't just a dream. Mark's dad was helping him fix an oil leak that Mark had on the top of his engine." So I got confirmation that this dream had information in it that I couldn't have possibly known. And if you are skeptical, I don't know how you can discount a dream with information that I could not have known any other way than through information from the other side. So the reason I think that signs are so important for people is because signs give us hope. They let us know that when we die, we continue on. After all, we are just energy beings. Science is proving that. And since energy can neither be created nor destroyed, it just takes a new form. And for those of you who have lost somebody like I did, where you didn't have a chance to talk to them, or maybe you were in a fight or things were not in a good place with your relationship and they suddenly died and you didn't get that closure, I want you to know that they hear every word that we ever said to them. And even if you didn't get a chance to say goodbye, they've heard your words and they know that about everything that's going on in your life, and they still love you from the other side. And I believe that this is why we get signs, so that we can understand that we are energy and our connection didn't end when they left this physical earthly plane. It still continues on, and now they're just in a new form, and they want you to know that they know what's going on in your life, and they want you to know that they love you and they are always connected to you. So through my book, I hope that when you read the story of Mark and I, and you understand maybe for us how music was so important, maybe you had another connection, like maybe you connected through butterflies with your passed away loved one, and maybe they'll send you butterflies so that you can see that they're around. I hope that you can understand my signs, and then you can begin to see your own signs, because this is so extremely healing. Oh, my life is so completely different after this experience. Not only did I get to understand that love is real and love never dies, but I've been able to create things with Mark as he is on the other side. So one of the ways that happened was that Mark and I, when he first died, I was missing him so much and I wanted to connect, but all of these mediums kept canceling my appointments. I was directed towards somebody who was called an energy healer. And I was skeptical. I didn't think I wanted to connect with an energy healer. I felt like I needed to connect with a medium. But I did make an appointment with this woman, and I recorded our session. And during our session, she said some mantras to me. She told me that I needed to hold the space for the love, that we were nothing but pure love, and we are love. And I would listen to these healing recordings as I was going on my daily walk. And one day when she said these mantras, I suddenly saw a picture of a heart flying in my mind with all of these banners that contain these mantras. And I felt very compelled to paint this painting. Now, I'm not a trained artist, and it was kind of an odd thing to do. I had to go out and buy paints and a canvas to do this, but I spent 2 days creating this painting. And then every day after that, I would go on my walk and I would see a heart flying with this special message in it. And I would quickly go home and write it down on a piece of paper. And I began to paint these flying hearts with these special empowering messages. And I don't know why, but I decided that I was going to paint 40 paintings in 40 days. Like 50 sounded like too many, 30 didn't sound like enough. And so I painted these 40 paintings. And as I was getting closer to the 40th painting, I realized that the last painting was going to land on Mark's birthday. And I knew instantly that the paintings had been divinely connected and created through our energy connection to one another, especially because a lot of the sayings that I used were sayings that Mark would say to me when he was alive, like stand in your truth and time will tell, and what's true for you is true for you. So the legacy of Mark and my relationship continues to go on. And ultimately now, here we are many years later. Mark has been gone since 2012, and I ultimately painted 400 of these paintings of these flying hearts with these banners that have been sent out into the world. And I believe the legacy of our connection was to actually help people and empower people to understand that they are powerful souls, that love never dies, that we are always connected, and that you can manifest and have whatever it is in your life that you want to create. And that's the legacy that Mark and I have sent into the world. Now, as I said, Mark has been gone for many years, and I continue even today to get special messages. About a year and a half ago, Mark started sending me a very special message. What he does is I'm listening to XM Radio's Yacht Rock Radio, and a song will be playing, and all of a sudden, the song Hold the Line by Toto begins playing over top of the radio. The screen will freeze and it will say another song that has just been playing is playing, but Hold the Line will play for almost 4 whole minutes. And then after the song ends, the screen updates and goes back to the regular programming. We have verified that the particular station that this happens to play on does not play the song Hold the Line, because Hold the Line is not a yacht rocky song. It plays on other XM radio stations like 70s on 7 and Classic Rewind, but not on that one. So it's a really special sign for me, and it has an extra meaning, because the last time that I saw Mark alive, Mark played 4 Toto songs, and Hold the Line is one of those songs that he played. So it's really special to continue to get signs from him, even though he's been gone for many, many years. And I know that he is always around me. I know that our energy connection will never die, and we are creating amazing things and sending them out into the world. And it is my greatest hope that the ripple effect of Mark and my relationship will heal many people, will empower many people, and will show people that love never